Hello everybody and welcome back to World of Warships Legends. My name is Spartan Elite 43 and tonight we are taking our very first look at the new German alternate battleship line, aka the battlecruisers, starting with the Tier 4, the Derflinger. Yeah. As its name would imply, this thing's a piece of crap. Let's get right into the build. So I'm just going to use my standard German battleship build. It gives you a kind of a decent chunk of either or. It gives you the secondaries. It also gives you a little bit of accuracy. But let's be honest, these things are crap. And I'll go over reasons why as we get into them. But Flambeau Cannoneer, Porcupine, Marksmanship, Master Mechanic. That gives you the extra things. Plus, we get to fight fire with fire, so that if you do get set on 3 fires while your damage con's out, or if you're out of damage cons and you get set on for 3 fires, you're going to be able to put those fires out. Now, we also are running Haruna, obviously, and Justinian Lions to get a little bit more of fire chance when you are using your heals. Okay? You could swap out Lions here for Azure Lane Scharnhorst or Andrew Cunningham to get a little bit of extra accuracy out of this thing. It wouldn't hurt. But honestly, these things are just not fun to play. I hope the higher tier ships are better. I've heard some good things about Zeton and hopefully the Ruprecht when we get up there. But good God, I don't want to play these low tier ships. Anyway, let's look at the other stats. We're running Aiming System Mod 1 because obviously we are fully upgraded, obviously. And we have limited damage control parties. Woo! 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 Can you tell my enthusiasm? But we do get 5 heals because of the Master Mechanic. And we get 3 secondary targeting boosters, which might do something when we actually get secondaries. But at these low tiers, honestly, probably not the best idea to build for secondaries because they don't do crap. But then again, neither do your main guns, so, I mean, it is what it is. Flag, we're running the Alpha Tester flag. It's purely cosmetic, so keep that in mind. We are also running Type 4 Camo, which gives us a boost to our detectability as well as incoming fire dispersion. When you have limited damage controls, you want to make sure that there's, less opportunity for people to actually hit you. But, honestly, it doesn't really help that much. Survivability, 50,000 hit points with 22% torpedo damage reduction. Artillery, you get 305 millimeter 50 caliber SKC-08 DRH LC 1912s, because the Germans have to put every goddamn number that ever was associated with every single gun that they've ever had. But you get 8 of them. They fire out to 15.8 kilometers with this build, which is actually pretty solid for the tier. They reload in 26 seconds, which also is not bad for the tier. But the 180-degree turn time will make you want to end your own existence. 45 seconds is godforsaken horrible. It is awful. And you'll see some of that in the video that I've got for you. HE shell maximum damage of 3,500, which honestly, whatever. I don't usually shoot HE out of this thing, though there is a moment where I probably should have used HE, but I didn't. But 23% chance to set fires, unless, of course, you are in heal, in which case that gets bumped up there quite a bit, thanks to Justinian Lions with this build. AP shell maximum damage of just 8,100. I know 8-inch cruisers that do more damage than that. I'm pretty sure. Maybe I'm wrong. But still, feels very, very lackluster in the damage department. Okay? Secondaries, you get 88mm L45 MPL C13s. You get 8 of those, reaching out to 6.1 kilometers, reloading in 4 seconds with this build. And they have a HE shell maximum damage of 1,000. Again, not particularly great, but 88mm guns. To be expected, but a 4% chance to set fire. Of course, that's without the boost from Justinian Lions when you're healing. Secondary armament, you get 150mm L45 MPL CO6s. You get 12 of those that reach out 6.1 kilometers with this build and reload in 8.6 seconds. They fire HE shells with a maximum damage of 1,800, which is much better, and a 10% chance to set fire. Again, that is before the buff from Justinian Lions when you're healing. AA defense. It has a little bit, but not much. 7.92 millimeter MG08s, you get 15 of those, doing 26 damage per second, reaching out to 1 kilometer. Yeah, 1 kilometer. You might as well be on the deck throwing up bottles at it. Like, yeah, that's basically what you got. 88 millimeter L45 MPL C13, you get 8 of those, doing 14 damage per second and reaching out to 3 kilometers. Again, not much. Maneuverability, though, you got 26.5 knot maximum speed with a 740 meter turning circle, which is actually pretty solid. The problem is, while it is speedy for a battleship, and it also has decent turning radius, again, we go back to the fact that those guns cannot possibly stay on target if you're trying to maneuver your ship, and we're going to showcase that in the fight as well. Rudder shift is a little bit on the slower side, but not that bad with a 14-second rudder shift. Okay, so once you get the thing turning, it actually turns relatively well. It just takes a little while to get turning. But if you're a battleship main, you're used to that, so you can work around that. Concealment, 12.3 kilometers by sea, 10.3 by air, 2 is always guaranteed, and 9.8 kilometer smoke firing penalty. Armor. Do not be fooled by this look of the armor. It does appear to have decent armor, and if you're up close, this could potentially come in handy. However, it's all flat, which means that it's not as effective as it could be. Which means even at pretty decent angles, you're going to be taking pins, especially at this upper portion of the deck and raised superstructure. I've talked about how much I hate raised superstructures. Now, obviously, this is to support the casemates for the ship, right above those torpedo nets, booms that you got there off the sides of the ship. But, yeah. You've got those casemates there, and while they are great, you know, they are nice, those big old 150 millimeter guns. But the problem is, it's all flat armor, which means you take pins everywhere, despite being angled. You've got, like, if you angle your belt and they hit high, they're going through that upper section that's flat, much like a Yami's cheek. Okay? And then if they decide that, you know, that's too much and they decide to aim and hit a little bit higher, they're shredding your gigantic superstructure that is just begging to give full pins. It's rough. And not to be outdone, you also have raised barbettes on not only the front gun, or not only the rear guns in the middle of the turrets, but the front guns as well. Meaning you take penetrations there and you lose your guns quite a bit. There really isn't a lot of good sides to this Tier 4 ship, I'll be real honest. I don't have a lot of goods to say about it. The guns are awful, the penetration angles are awful, which I guess you could switch off my Porcupine skill for the Aladad skill, which would give you the better penetration angles, which would probably be a good idea if you want to buff your main guns. So, I mean, there are ways that you could build the ship to do better. This is not an optimal build by any stretch of the imagination. This just happens to be the build that I use for all my German battleships, so tailor it to what you prefer to play, okay? Keep that with a grain of salt. And keep in mind, this is the Tier 4, so it is what it is. Alright, let's get rid of the armor and take a look at the Citadel. Whoops. Was it this? Yeah. Okay, there we go. So it does have a turtleback configuration, meaning that up close and personal, this thing does not take citadels, which is good. Like, I have yet to be citadeled in this thing, even going broadside at close ranges, not taking any sort of citadel. At any sort of range, I've never taken any citadels, because, I mean, like I said, this thing isn't bad, but the problem is, it just takes all of the pins everywhere. It doesn't have to give you citadels. It's kind of like the Bismarck and the GK, while they are considered tanky. There also is so much surface area for shells to just find places to pin that even at decent angles, you're still taking huge chunks of damage. And when you have limited damage controls and your guns get knocked out a lot and you get set on fire a lot, you can see why this could become a problem. So while you don't have to worry about really getting citadeled in this thing, you do have to worry about just taking massive amounts of damage. And those limited damage control and the fact that you don't get a commander that allows you to have more damage controls is rough. It really is. Now look at the overview. Secondary reach. It has above average secondary battery range. Yay. We did buff that in this, and you could see it got out to 6.1 kilometers, which at tier 4 is not bad. But it does leave a lot to be desired for what you give up to get that. On-demand repairs, damage control reloads faster, but has limited charges. Much like the Russians, this becomes a huge problem, especially later on. Early on, you can kind of manage it because the fire starters you can usually get rid of relatively quickly and not have to worry about getting burnt down too fast. However, later on, this is going to become a huge problem when you start going up against, I don't know, things like Baltimore, Wichita, Colbert, Des Moines, Buffalo, freaking all of the Germans, the Weimar, the Mainz, like all of the Russians, the Ochakovs, the Kutuzovs, like all of the Japanese crews. You guys get to the thought process here. You do not want to be going into high-tier battles and have limited damage controls in a brawling battleship that is built to get close and torp things. I don't understand what the developers are thinking about giving these things limited damage controls at all. Like, I really don't understand, especially without giving them a commander that actually gives them a chance, like to give them extra ones. Like, I personally don't understand what the purpose of this entire line is. I really don't. But that's just my personal opinion. So, with that being said, let's take a look at it. And I don't hate the look of these. It's a German battleship, or a German ship in general. It's going to look pretty solid. And you get to see that. It's pretty symmetrical. I love the smokestacks. You got 2 large smokestacks right there in the middle of the ship, spaced out enough for the lifeboats, or they're not really lifeboats per se. They're actually used for, like transporting things, like whether it be going ashore or whatever. They're not meant to be there in a, like, emergency situation, because more often than not, in a battleship situation, if you're in an emergency, those ships or those little boats have already been torn to pieces. So they're not going to do you a whole lot of good in a life, emergency situation. Anyway, let's stop talking about that and just take a look and gander around the ship. And I don't hate them, like I said. I don't hate the look of German ships at all. In fact, they all look pretty solid. And I love the casemates. Y'all know I love casemates on old school ships. But, yeah, that's about as far as my love for these things are going to go. So, with that being said, let's get to the gameplay. Alrighty, so we're going to be on the Solomon Islands, and we are in the Derflinger. Yeah. So you guys by now have already heard that I'm not a big fan of these lower tier ships. I have no idea about the higher tier stuff. I haven't actually got to play them yet. I'm going to reserve my judgment until I get to play them personally. But these lower tier ships are feeling pretty lackluster, if I'm honest. However, we're in kind of the perfect sort of match for these things, which is very few battleships, a lot of cruisers. Unfortunately, because matchmaking loves me so much, I get spawned directly across from both of the battleships that are in this match, a New York and a Derflinger. I know. Why do I always get the best possible people? It's counterintuitive. Anyway, we're not going to worry about that. We play the hand that we're dealt. We win the side that we're on. We're going to step up, we're going to rise above, we're going to take the challenge, and we're going to shove this ship right down the enemy's throat. And, surprisingly, we're going to come out on top. Now, not surprisingly, we're going against tier 4 players. Let's be honest, they have no idea what they're doing for the most part. Like, let's just put that out there. Like, I don't expect high-tier game. Well, honestly, even at high tiers, I don't expect people to do much. But at low tiers, I don't expect them to understand angling. I just expect them to sail broadside and shoot all their guns, possibly spamming HE because they see numbers are bigger for HE for whatever reason. So they're like, HE. So that's what I expect at lower tiers, as being demonstrated by the New York and the Derflinger on the enemy team sailing straight line broadside. Now, our first shot is pretty solid. Our second shot, a little less so, but we get 5,000 out of it. We've got 13,000 damage already. Again, these guys are sailing basically flat broadside, and we've had decent RNG up to this point. And this is kind of my problem with these ships, is even though you get decent accuracy occasionally, the shells just don't ever really seem to do a lot. I guess that was 7,000. That's a good hit. Like, that's a solid salvo right there. But that doesn't happen all that often, and that's my issue. And then you top that off with all of the negatives that these things come with the fact that they've got such flat armor, which is indicative of the time period, I get that. And then on top of that, the limited damage controls, which is awful. And then on top of that, the super slow turret traverse. And you can really start to see why these things are just rough, even at tier 4. Like, they're just rough. Now, the good news is, as we're closing in on these guys, we get double fired here. We're going to have to use one of our damage cons for that, which is really unfortunate. Again, this is what I'm talking about with these damage cons. We just had to use one of our 3. We get 2 more of those. And then that's it. So you have to use them sparingly. And when you get multi-fired in a salvo like that, like, the worst thing that could happen is to immediately get set back on fire, or potentially worse, get double fired. It's rough. You're really relying on hopefully getting triple fired again. Now here, we know that this thing has flat armor, so we're going to aim high. And look at the result. We get a solid hit out of that. That's what we were expecting. That's why we aimed that higher. We know our ship, and the good thing is we have that icebreaker bow by having that nice belt armor that goes all the way up to the bow, which is indicative of the Germans, as well as a few others like the Russians and stuff at the tiers. So you don't get overmatched as easily. They have to aim high if they're going to overmatch your bow or stern. So that's the good news. Now here I make a decision to turn away from the Derflinger and engage the New York directly because he's flanking me. And I can't angle against both of them unless I go turn out against this New York. Now unfortunately New York has decided to load armor piercing, and that's really unfortunate for us as we get set on fire twice again. So we have no choice but to immediately use our damage control, which leaves us with just 1 left. Now, obviously, at this point, he's got less than 10,000 health. Our secondaries are doing well. Our mains are able to finish him off. And that's going to leave us a good chance to start turning around on this Derflinger. Now, our destroyer has not been able to land any torpedoes up to this point, I don't think. And we're angled relatively well. He aims high. Our superstructure is already saturated. So we don't take a lot of damage there. Now, look at where the enemy destroyers are on the map. I have a feeling, a sneaking suspicion, that those guys are going to come straight for me, okay? Just a thought, you know, it's a possibility, and unfortunately my destroyer is going to make the dumbest possible play that he could make, which is to just YOLO the Derflinger. And the worst part is he somehow manages to YOLO them at point-blank range and miss all of the torpedoes. I don't understand how it happened, but that's what's about to happen. It's really tragic, to be honest. And unfortunately for him, that Derflinger shells are not going to miss him. Keep that in mind for in a little bit when I take a shot at destroyers at close range. Just keep that in mind. It just goes to show my RNG is not what everybody else's is. But we get a pretty solid shot through the rear of the Derflinger. He did actually manage to hit a torpedo, it looks like, on the Derflinger. So there is that. I don't know if the Derflinger is taking a flood. It does look like he potentially is flooding here. We get a fire with our secondaries as well. That's Justinian Lion stepping up, but unfortunately, or fortunately, he goes down. Now here, I don't want to use my last damage control, because I know that the 2 destroyers are coming my direction. There's not anything I can do about this, and this is the problem. When you get into these tight situations where you're having to fight these destroyers, we're going to run into a problem, and that is the god-awful turret traverse of these things. Watch this. Look at me trying to get my guns on target. I'm having to sail in a broadside formation for way too long just to get the guns on target. Now I've got to wait for him to go make his move. And we've got our secondary booster. We're about to punch the secondary booster here to try to get some shells on target. We initially target the Acasta, and then we're like, you know what? Maybe that's not the best option here. So maybe we go with the T-22 because he seems to be the aggressor. The Acasta's kind of playing like Yipper Dog, where he's got your attention and the other guy's trying to kill you. That's kind of where this is going. Now, we do get our high cal here, but watch this shot. Oh, he disappears. Now, we know torpedoes are coming. We're trying to turn away, but we can't keep our guns on target to do any damage to this guy. Look at this. As we're turning away, and unfortunately, we're not able to turn away fast enough either. As we're trying to get turned out, we're going to take a torpedo, and that's going to be the end of us. And that's my issue at these lower tiers with this freaking ship. Like, It's serviceable. It's not the worst ship that I've played at the tier by far. Like, there's plenty of other ships at the tier that I would just rather not play, aka Congo. I hate the Congo. Y'all know this. Like, I don't know why so many people love the Congo. I hate the Congo. It's definitely my least favorite tier 4 battleship. But it's in the running, okay? It's in the discussion for least favorite. Like, it's right there. It's just slightly better than Congo for me. And it's got too many negatives for me. Now, again, I reserve my judgment for the other ships as I've played them as we go down the line. But keep in mind, I gotta say right off the bat, guys, I am not spending a bunch of money on this update. Like, I'm not doing it. I'm not going to hurry through the line. I'm going to, research them the old-fashioned way. I'm not skipping ahead. Like, I do have a few of these ships already unlocked. Mainly the tier 4, 5, and 6, I believe. So, I don't have the tier 7 or the tier 8 yet. That's going to take time to unlock. So, bear in mind, it will take a little while. Same goes for the campaign. I'm not buying out campaign day one. I personally couldn't care less about the campaign ship. Obviously, I buy the Admiralty backing for 2,500 doubloons, but other than that, I'm not going to rush the ship. I will get the ship eventually, and you guys will get a video on that when that happens. But, and then the third thing, the Bourgogne, or the Bourgogne, whatever you want to call it, I'm gonna try to speed that research up. That'll be the only place that I really go with any sort of money being spent like heavily, because I want to get that ship out as quickly as I can. Because honestly, I've been looking forward to it. So that's a ship that I do intend to play once it comes out. Now, keep in mind, this is going to be one of those update cycles that's just really not a lot going on. There's no ranked or arena battles during this time. There is the Halloween stuff that's going to be coming up later in the month, so I might do a stream on that. But for the most part, you guys are going to be seeing, me get caught up on some of the content that has come out over previous months. The tier 8s that I haven't quite unlocked yet. The German battle cruiser or battleships, alternative line, whatever you want to call them. We're going to be trying to get caught up on some of that stuff, and I just don't want to spend a bunch of money to do it because, I'll be honest, none of the ships really give me a whole lot of, tingly feelings to really justify the spending. So let me know what you guys think about the update overall. Let me know what you guys think about the German alternative line. I hope it gets better down the line. I'm holding out hope that the Zeton and stuff at the higher tiers get more fun to play, because so far, I'm not looking forward to the grind. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. What we are watching is what can only be described as a team of low-tier players on both sides. The friendly Oklahoma gets what he can only be described as the greatest possible option of spawns that he could ever get. He's in an Oklahoma, which is already a pretty powerful ship for a tier 4. Remember, Oklahoma is the premium version, and it gets the same guns as the Texas and the Arizona. It gets two double turrets and 2 triple turrets, and the 2 triple turrets are Arizona guns. They are nasty, okay? Great accuracy, great punching power, and he got put up against nothing but cruisers. He never had to deal with a destroyer, never had to deal with any battleships. I had both of the battleships on my side, and both the destroyers came after me. So that guy never had to deal with any of that. All he had was cruisers to shoot at. So it's not a surprise that the man managed to do pretty well on his side of the map. Now, our Mitsuki, surprisingly, despite playing this really, really poorly here, is actually going to get away with quite a lot, because these guys are going to play it even more poorly for him. Now, he's reversing. He's broadside to a cruiser that gets short fuse armor piercing and can absolutely rip them apart. And then he dumps the torpedoes into the smokescreen, and the Emerald, just like the previous ship, the little destroyer, the Icarus, managed to run right into him. This Emerald's going to find a way to run right into these torpedoes as well. Like, they're coming. You see a destroyer broadside. I get you're a low-tier player. You're probably brand new. You have no idea. I get that. Like, I'm not picking on these people. I'm just pointing out the obvious. Like, the guys clearly have no idea. You seen that one torpedo disappear before all the rest? Yeah, that's right on the bow of the Emerald. Takes all of his health. Now the Emerald comes out broadside on in front of the only battleship left, and that ends about as well as it could for our team. Now, our team has the points advantage. These guys have to push. They know that. So they are pushing in to try to deal with them. And Mitsuki here, Unfortunately, you can't win very many gunfights in a Matsuki. You're just not going to. These are the most inaccurate pop guns you ever get, and you only get 2 of them in a Matsuki, so they are just not good gunboats, okay? But you do what you gotta do. You fire your guns, you love to see it, but then, of course, the T-22 comes out broadside in front of an Oklahoma and an Emerald, and is swiftly dealt with, and to the Oklahoma's credit, he picks up a Quacken. So you love to see it. 84,000 damage done. We get a high caliber. Notice the Oklahoma didn't even get a high caliber despite getting a Kraken. So I feel like we carried ourselves pretty well considering what we were up against. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. And as always, if you like what I'm doing, punch the like button, leave a comment below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and as always, I will see you in the next video.